Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. It rained heavily at the place known as the Valley of the End. It was as if the heavens themselves were crying at what had transpired there, an epic duel between friends. Lying on the ground near the water were two people, Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki. Both were out cold and were motionless. However, unknown to them, several hooded people watched the whole battle from afar. Only when neither of the fighters was moving did the four figures come out of the forest. Slowly they walked up to the two genin, and one of them, a woman judging by her figure, bent down and checked their pulses. "Well?" one of the others asked, a male by his voice. The woman looked up, revealing her blue eyes. "They're alive, and have minimal wounds. It should be easy to move Naruto-kun." "What about the Uchiha?" she asked. "Leave him," the man said. "It doesn't matter if Konoha gets him or Orochimaru, we will have our revenge against Konoha and the rest of the 5 great countries." And with that he picked up Naruto, making sure not to harm him any more than he already is, and all 4 of them headed off. An hour or so later Kakashi along with Pakken arrived to the valley. When they got there all they found was an unconscious Sasuke, but no Naruto. Kakashi began to worry. What happened to him? He couldn't have fled, could he? No, that wasn't like Naruto. "Pakken, can you get his scent?" Kakashi asked the nin dog. Pakken took a couple of sniffs and shook his head sadly. "No, the rain is washing away any scent. I do however smell a lot of chakra having been released, so I have to say that the Kyuubi must have come out." Kakashi nodded, a sad look in his eye as he picked up Sasuke and hefted him onto his back. With one last look at the statue of the first Hokage, the two headed off. The news of Naruto's disappearance became top priority amongst the Council of Konoha. Those who despised the Kyuubi container merely put in that he was dead, which earned him a cold look from Tsunade. The idea that the boy might have fled was out of the question. Naruto was too damn loyal to the village to turn traitor. Tsunade wanted to send out a search party to find him, but the elders rebuffed her plans. If the other villagers knew that they were missing their Jinchuriki, then they would waste no time in taking it to their advantage. Also, they had the Uchiha boy back, and that was all that mattered. So, against Tsunade's wishes and a few others, Naruto was declared Kia, missing nin. To say the people of Konoha were upset would be an understatement. On that night there wasn't a single bar or restaurant that wasn't celebrating the death of the demon boy and the return of the Uchiha prodigy. A few had even tried to ransack his home, only to be brutally beaten down personally by Tsunade and the remains of the Rookie 12. The Hokage decided that the apartment would be banned to the public, as a way of honoring Naruto. There were some people who mourn over the loss of the Uzumaki boy. Old man Chuki and his daughter Ayami were very upset of the loss of their favorite customer. So upset that they even closed their restaurant for about a week. Iruka would be at his apartment, staring at a photo of himself and Naruto on the day after the boy became a genin. "You would have been a great Hokage," Iruka would think to himself every now and then. Kakashi stood at the memorial stone of the fallen for hours, reading the names of his teammates and sensei. "Forgive me Rin, Obito, Sensei, Kushina-san. I couldn't keep my promise," he thought. Kankuro and Temari would sit on a bench, watching their little brother stare up at the sky. Those two had much to thank Naruto for saving their little brother from himself, and now they could never repay him. Gaara thought about the words Naruto said to him in the aftermath of their battle. "Naruto, thank you," he thought to himself. "To honor you, I shall become Kazekage and prove to the village I am not a monster, just like you said." The Rookie 12 took Naruto's apparent demise very hard, especially the rescue squad. Shikamaru would pace around in his family's backyard, trying to constantly go over his strategy, trying to figure out where he went wrong. This earned the concern of his mother Yoshino. Choji barely ate anything for a week, even after being released from the hospital. Neji didn't say a word after he got back to the compound, too upset about what happened, even if the mission was a success. Kiba just stayed home during his healing, silently looking out the window. Rock Lee didn't even do any training for a day, the grief too much for him to bear. Though they didn't know Naruto very well, Ino, Tenten and Shino also mourned for the loss of the blonde-hair boy. Ino even bought a large assortment of flowers for the tombstone that was made for him. Sakura remained by Sasuke's side in the hospital, both grateful and angry of the situation. I got one person who I cared about back. But I lost another one. Sakura thought sadly. Why does Kami have to be so cruel? But the one who took the loss hard out of all of them was none other than Hinata Hyuga. For the rest of the month she either was in her room, at the training grounds or at Naruto's grave, cleaning it or placing flowers on it. She barely ate anything and servants would have to bring her food to her room. Her only regret was that she never told Naruto her feelings for him. She wondered what would have happened if she told him sooner, instead of keeping her feelings to herself. Not being so shy around him either. Even if he rejected her, at least she wouldn't feel such pain. Sooner or later she snapped out of her depression. The only reason was because Naruto wouldn't want her to feel down. I'll become stronger, she thought to herself with newfound confidence. For Naruto-kun, much had changed since Naruto's disappearance. Neji, now a jonin, was currently dating Tenten. Shikamaru was dating Temari, apparently acting as a liaison for the Suna ambassador had its advantages. Ino had begun to form a romantic relationship with the new member of Team Kakashi, Sai. Gaara had become the new Kazekage of Suna, while dating his former student Matsuri. Sasuke had been kept under house arrest with a curfew as well. Sakura would usually be escorting him around the village, while ignoring the looks of awe from the citizens and how they constantly thanked him for ridding him of the demon brat. Of course that earned him a good punch from Sakura, leaving the poor fool out cold for hours. The biggest change was in Hinata. She had developed both physically and mentally. She decided that she would grow her hair out and showed a little bit of her figure, though only a little. Hinata was still shy sometimes, but any signs of stuttering were long gone. She had also become one of the strongest kunoichizes in the village, perhaps even rivaling Tsunade. Despite her shyness, her confidence soared up high to the point where not even the simple insult from her father would bring her down. Hinata had developed much over the years and she owed everything to Naruto. That also caused a bit of problems for her clan. Talk of Naruto's death was still running rampant now and then around the village. And unfortunately, despite Tsunade's warnings, people would now and then spit on Naruto's name. This was a problem because if people were ever to say bad about him in front of one of Naruto's friends, they would get a scolding or a beating, and in Hinata's case, put into a near-death state. The worst time was when Hinata was making her daily trip to Naruto's tombstone. She caught several men, drunk, defying the stone, writing words such as demon and hellspawn. All of those men were literally crippled in several areas of the body. This did not go well with the Hyuga clan. They were a well-respected clan, living among the village since its founding. With reports of a clan member, let alone the heiress of the clan, doing such things was unacceptable. Hiashi had tried to discipline his daughter, but it appeared he no longer had control over her, not entirely though. However, she began to earn the respect of not just the majority of the branch house, but some of the main house members as well. Even Hanabi began to look up to her a little. But let us come to the current events of right now. Team 8, or Team Kurenai as they were now called, had been summoned to the Hokage's office for a new assignment. Judging by Tsunde's expression, it was pretty serious. Once they were all standing to attention did Tsunde speak. The mission I'm about to give you is of the utmost importance as it affects us both nationally and internally. I'm sure that most of you has heard the invasion of the land of tea. Kiba and Hinata were in the dark but Shino explained. I heard it from my father. A large army consisting of samurais and ninjas from an unknown country invaded the land of tea. Because they lacked the military force, the entire country was taken over in just a few weeks. The daimyo's family was completely wiped out. Hinata put a hand to her mouth, horrified of what she just heard. Kiba gulped. That was big, even for him. Tsunde nodded and continued. Which brings us back to the current situation. Due to the conflicts between Takagakure and Konoha, the daimyos of our respected countries are meeting in a neutral area to create a more permanent alliance. I dispatched a squad to escort the fire daimyo to the rendezvous point, but we lost contact with them a day ago and have heard nothing from the waterfall village. I'm sending you along with Team Kakashi, Team Asuma and Team Guy to find out what the situation is. Kurenai. The said woman looked up. Because your team is more adept to tracking, I'm putting you in command of this mission. Understood, Kurenai said. Tsunde nodded and dismissed them. Once they were gone, Tsunde said, you can come out now. And with just those words the Sannin Jiraiya appeared out of nowhere. He looked the same after 3 years, yet he was not his usual happy self, though he hadn't been like that since Naruto's apparent demise. Still, that hadn't stopped him with his research, though she was pretty sure that was only to distract him from his guilt. I'm guessing that you're not just here to say hello? Tsunde asked. The Toad Sage smirked. That and to say I may have gotten some clues on who a mysterious invaders might be. He paused as he waited for Tsunde to speak. When she didn't, he continued. One of my sources managed to get a tip on that the invaders came from one of the countries from the far west, across the ocean. So far the only country there that I know about is the Whirlpool country, but they were destroyed years ago. Still, you can never be too sure. Tsunde sighed as she leaned back in her chair. I have to admit that we hadn't heard much from the west in a while since, I guess when the QB attacked 16 years ago. She then got up and looked out the window facing the village. Sometimes I wonder if this is some sort of cruel joke that Kami has set upon us. Back with Kurenai's team, they along with the others had already set off towards the last known destination of the daimyo's convoy. While Team Kurenai had a Kamaru, Kakashi summoned his nin dogs and divided them up amongst the rest of the teams. The journey was a somewhat quiet one due to feelings towards a certain Uchiha. Those among the retrieval team had still not fully forgiven him of what happened. Though the other members of the Rookie 12 had no problem, Hinata was also with the members of the retrieval team in the dislike of the Uchiha. In fact, when Hinata first saw the boy leaving the hospital, well, let's just say that she nearly sent him back into the hospital if it weren't for at least 7 Chunin holding her back. This technically earned her the scorn of all of Sasuke's fangirls, except for Sakura, who knew what she was going through. A few minutes later, Akamaru began to pick up the scent. All right, good work, buddy, Kiba said as he patted the large dog on the back. Akamaru barked in joy at the praise he was getting. However, when they arrived to the area, which was a few miles of the main road. It wasn't a pretty sight. The entire field was littered with bodies of ninjas who still had kunai and shuriken embedded into their bodies and blank looks on their faces. Sakura put a hand to her mouth in horror while Choji suddenly felt full in his stomach. Kakashi walked over to one of the ninjas and closed his eyes in respect. "I'll send a message to Tsunade-sama to have someone retrieve the bodies. But I don't see the daimyo or his personal guards anywhere." Everyone turned to look at Shikamaru. Though Kurenai was the chosen leader of this mission, it was clear that the Nara was a better strategist out of all of them. Shikamaru sighed and muttered, "Troublesome," and after taking a breather said, "It's clear that the daimyo isn't here, so that must mean he is alive. Of course we have no idea where he is. Akamaru can pick up his scent easily," Kiba said as the said dog barked. Then he began to sniff the ground for the scent. But when he found it, it was pointing in multiple directions. Everyone was baffled except for Shikamaru, who just sighed. "I feared as much. It seems like they're trying to baffle us or just buying time to get the daimyo." Sasuke raised an eyebrow. "You think they're planning a trap?" he asked. Giving the Uchiha a glare, Shikamaru continued. "Yes, it could very well be a trap. I think they're trying to split us up and take us out separately as I originally said. Or they could be trying to buy time. But I already know which way the daimyo went." "How did you figure it out?" Sakura asked, shocked on how fast the Nara thought everything out. Shikamaru sighed and pointed the ground littered with bodies. "You can tell that these guys were trying to draw the attackers away from the main road. That means the daimyo was most likely in a carriage, so it could never have gone in any of the other directions. However, if we all go in one group, I'm pretty sure the enemy will be able to regroup faster and we may have some difficulties." Then he turned towards Kurenai. "I suggest that each team takes a different route that follows the main road. That way we can easily get to the daimyo without alerting the enemy to our actual presence." Everyone looked at Kurenai, waiting for her actual orders. Finally she said, "We'll do as Shikamaru suggested. Team Kurenai will go ahead of the others and try to catch up with the daimyo. Team Kakashi and Team Guy will hold the rear while Team Asuma moves on the sides of the road." Everyone nodded and headed off. However, what they didn't know was that they were being watched. Crouching on a tree branch was a ninja wearing a black and white jumpsuit. Strapped to it were arm pads, leg pads and shoulder pads. He had short spiky red hair and a helmet that covered his eyes. Strapped to his back were dual swords and around his waist was a headband that had the symbol of a swirling circle. Once the Konoha shinobi were gone, he spoke through his radio. "They have begun to move, Sozo-sama. Understood, keep an eye on them. Attack when only necessary, Senritsu." The man on the other side of the radio said. The man nodded and then disappeared into the shadows. Back with Team Kurenai, the 5 of them had still found no signs of the daimyo. Kurenai began to worry that he might have actually been killed. But still they kept up their search. If they failed, then this would greatly disgrace their village to the other great countries, and the successor might even bankrupt them too for the loss of the current daimyo. Suddenly Shino said, "Kurenai-sensei, my bugs have found him." "Which way?" Kurenai asked. Shino listened to his bugs for a moment before replying, "Straight ahead of us, sensei." Sure enough, at least 2 miles after, the team along with the others finally reached the daimyo's escort, which consisted of a regiment of his army. At first suspicious of them, the soldiers finally grant them access to see the daimyo after seeing their headbands. The daimyo was pleased to see some Konoha ninja, especially when he recognized Asuma, a former member of the 12 Guardian Ninjas, and Kakashi, the famed copycat ninja. After offering his deepest apologies about the loss of the other ninjas, the now larger group began escorting the daimyo to the meeting point. But soon there was a loud rustling in one of the bushes, causing the ninjas to bring the guard up. Instead of an attack, however, it was another ninja, seriously wounded, and judging by his headband he was from Takagakure. Sakura immediately ran to his side and started to check his wounds along with Ino. These are wounds from a large weapon, a curved one nonetheless, Sakura said as she examined a large slash on the man's chest. Suddenly the ninja's eyes open and then he tried to speak. Danger. Must hurry. Daimyo's life is in jeopardy. Before anyone could say anything, a kunai flew out of nowhere and struck the shinobi in the heart. It got worse when they realized that there was an exploding tag attached to it. Moving as fast as they could, Sakura and Ino managed to get out of the way before the tag blew up and consumed the body in flames. Who threw that? Choji asked. Suddenly there was a sound of blades clashing. Everyone turned around to see said blocking a mysterious ninja, who was Senritsu, who was trying to attack the daimyo. Soon more ninjas, who were wearing a similar version that Konoha wears, except blue, appeared all armed and ready for a fight. Asuma attacked Senritsu, thus freeing Sai from his burden. Senritsu pulled out his other sword and attacked Asuma, the both locked in combat. Speaking quickly, Kurenai shouted to Kakashi. Kakashi teams will go and assist the waterfall's daimyo. The others will stay here and hold off these attackers. Kakashi nodded and after sharing the message to Sakura, Sai and Sasuke, the 8 of them headed off. Several of the enemy ninjas tried to stop them but were immediately smacked to the side by Lee and Guy, allowing their friends to head off without interference. Asuma backed away from Senritsu, who began to form some hand signs. Reiten, Tenku no Kiatsu. Enlightenment of the heavens, and suddenly several lightning bolts fell from the sky, heading towards Asuma. The Jonin managed to dodge them but then Senritsu used another jutsu. Dayton, Shinohaya. Death Room. Then 3 walls appeared around Asuma, cutting off his escape route, and allowing Senritsu to make a straight beeline towards him with his sword out. But before he could deal the blow, a large fist nearly crushed him, forcing him to jump out of the way. Asuma smirked as Choji stood by his side. Back with the other group, Kurenai and Kakashi's team discovered blood along the ground, soon followed by bodies, which they identified as Takagakure's shinobis. Kakashi began to wonder who could have taken out so many of these elite warriors so easily. His thoughts were cut off when Kiba told them to stop. When they did, they found themselves in front of the building that was to be used for the peace signing, except now it was in ruins. Bodies littered the ground around the building and the walls were smeared with blood and weapons were everywhere. Kiba, what's wrong? Hinata asked her teammate. Kiba was rubbing Akamaru's head reassuringly. Akamaru is smelling a huge amount of chakra and a massive killer intent nearby. It has him completely freaked out. A dark chuckle caught their attention and all of them looked up at the building to see a man standing on the roof of the building. He wore a purple chest plate and a sleeveless shirt underneath it. He also had black pants too and long red hair. His eyes were a dark blue and in his hand was a scythe. His face showed a sick smile and he was letting out a large killer intent, but not the one that Akamaru was sensing. Then something caught Sakura's attention and she started to back away in fear. Look, eye in his hand. Everyone looked and gasped. In the man's left hand was the head of the daimyo, blood still dripping out of it. The daimyo's face was one of pure fear and terror. The man smirked and threw the head down below, causing a loud smack as it hit the ground right in front of the Konoha ninjas. Kakashi noticed that there was a box, sealed also tied to the head. Please give that to Tsunade-chan, a gift from my lord to her. The man said and disappeared. Kakashi carefully picked up the head and the box before turning to the others. We should notify Tsunade-sama at once about this and check on the others too. The mission was a failure. They had managed to save the fire daimyo's life at the cost of the waterfall's daimyo, along with the large loss of life to add as well. Takagakure was in an uproar about what happened, but there was nothing Tsunade could do about the situation except take the blame and give half of the ryo that the fire daimyo gave her to the other village as a way of saying sorry. However, what caused for real alarm was the box that Kakashi brought back with him. Tsunade ordered for him, Shizune and herself to be the only people in the room once the seal was removed. When it was they discovered two things. One was a headband, with a symbol that they recognized. That's the symbol of the Uzushiogakure. Shizune stuttered in absolute shock. But it was the second thing that really caught him off guard. Its impact caused Tsunade to slump back into her chair in shock and disbelief. Kakashi for once had nothing to say as his eye widened in horror. Shizune put a hand over her mouth to cover her gasp of shock. It was the first Hokage's necklace, the same one Tsunade gave to Naruto. Elsewhere in the Whirlpool country, a man, the same one from before, entered the throne room of the Whirlpool daimyo, who was currently sitting on his throne drinking some green tea. He appeared to be very young, perhaps in his teens, and he had yellow spiky hair and blue eyes. He wore a short-sleeve orange coat with black flames at the bottom, with light ninja armor underneath it that was colored red. Leaning to the left was a katana and on the right was a golden kakara. He had a bored look on his face as well. The long-haired man walked up to the daimyo and bowed. Your Majesty, I have completed the mission to which you have given me. The daimyo of the country that hosted Takagakure is dead. The young man nodded, a smile on his face. And what of the fire daimyo, Yoko? Yoko shook his head. I'm afraid neither myself nor Senritsu were able to kill him. A shame really, it would have been a good feast. His daimyo rubbed his chin and then asked, we shall wait until we make a move on one of the 5 great countries. Has Soza led the army towards Takagakure? Yes, Your Majesty, by now they must have crossed the border and are heading there with all speed. Yoko said, then he added, and I deliver the message as well, Naruto-sama. Naruto smiled. Good work, you may retire to your quarters. You've earned it. Yoko bowed his head. You honor me, he said as he left. Then he paused and turned around to face Naruto. Also be careful when releasing your killer intent, Naruto-sama. I could sense it from the fire country. Naruto smirked as Yoko walked away. Tsunade waited until the council was seated and quiet. With them were also Shizune, Kakashi and Jiraiya. Also there was head of Root Danzo. Once people were listening, did Tsunade speak. I've summoned you to discuss about the incident concerning the daimyo of the country that houses Takagakure. Anime and manga. Koharu, one of the elders and the late third Hokage's teammate, spoke up. Why? Are we in danger of being invaded? Tsunade shook her head. No. The reason why I summoned you all was because we may have found out who is responsible for this, or at least a theory. When no one said anything, she continued. We believe it may be the Whirlpool Nation, in other words the Uzumaki clan. There was silence for a few seconds before the whole room exploded with voices, people talking to each other and asking questions. When Tsunade calmed everyone down, Homaru, the other elder, spoke. How is this possible, Tsunade? No word has been heard from the Whirlpool Nation in years. Tsunade sighed. I know, which makes this all the more difficult. If it really is them, then we have a problem, especially since they wielded the Buki Ruko Kiro, weapons of the six paths. Some of the younger civilian members had blank looks on their faces. Jiraiya sighed and explained. They are powerful weapons that were wielded by the sage of the six paths, and the Uzumaki clan acquired them somehow, apparently during the clan's founding. Also, the samurai of the country have a special division called the Alpha Corps, elite samurai who wear armor that negates ninjutsu and genjutsu. Also, their ninjas are very skilled in combat as well. If they attacked us in full force, we wouldn't last a week. A lot of the council members were getting nervous. Finally, one of them spoke. Isn't there something that we can do? Tsunade shook her head. I'm afraid not. We did have an alliance with them once, but since communication was lost so many years ago, I don't know what would happen. And we have no idea who their leader is right now, so negotiations would be near to impossible. Suede glared at the old man before pulling something out of her pocket and placing it on the desk. When she moved her hand, she revealed it was the first Hokage's necklace. I believe Naruto Uzumaki may be among their ranks. This earned some gasps from the whole council, each with different feelings in them. Danzo was angry that not only was the boy alive, but not under his control like he had planned all those years ago. The clan leaders were feeling regret of not standing up for the boy all those years ago, as it was clear he might come back to the village for revenge. The civilians were angry that the boy was not dead and scared of what would happen if he came back. Standardized and admissions tests. Shikaku, head of the Nara clan, sighed. This is such a drag. Though we shouldn't be relaxed, I doubt that Naruto would want to attack the village. He loved Konoha too much, despite certain people's harsh words towards him. He said the last part while looking at the civilian section. Tsunade sighed. I hope you're right, Shikaku-san, I really do. Then she turned to the rest of the council. What has happened here is to be kept a secret until we can think of some way to protect ourselves. None of you can tell a soul out here whatsoever. Is that clear? Everyone shook their heads and they were dismissed, escorted by Shizune. Kakashi also left as well, leaving just Tsunade and Jiraiya, and Tonton. The Toad Sage looked at his old teammate. Any idea of how to deal with this, Tsunade? He asked. Tsunade shook her head. No idea. Right now I need a drink. As she poured herself one, she thought to herself, what's happened to you, Naruto? Soza Uzumaki, uncle to Naruto Uzumaki, watched from a distance as the village hidden in the waterfall burned out in the distance. He wore a black bandana with Uzushiogakou's symbol on it. His red hair went down to his neck and he wore a blue shirt underneath a black coat. Also, he had black gloves and black pants too. Strapped to his back was a large nodaki. This reminded him a lot of the stories he heard as a kid when a force of both Kumo Nin and Iwa Nin attacked Uzushiogakure. He remembered how he and his sister had fled with their parents and when they decided to live in Konoha. However, he began to develop a hatred for Konoha. They were their allies, why didn't they come to Azu's aid? And when he heard that Kushina's son was still alive, he wanted to make all haste to Konoha and retrieve him. However, he knew that Naruto would be safer in Konoha until the Whirlpool country was properly rebuilt. He also knew that he wouldn't force Naruto to do anything that wasn't in his best interest. It was Naruto's decision to do this, and Soza would help Naruto see the world united under his rule. A Jonin suddenly appeared from behind him. Soza-san, I've come with a report. Soza nodded. Speak, he ordered. The Jonin nodded. Yes, sir. We've taken out their leader with ease and are currently rounding up any of the wounded or civilians and taking them to the camps. But a small yet significant group is holding out at the center of the village. And they're being led by their Jinchuriki, Fu, container of the seven tails. Soza sighed. He wished that the girl had turned over to their side when he first met her. But alas, she was determined to make a difference in her village and have her comrades recognized her as a fellow ninja. I will deal with her. Surround them and cut them off from retreating. We need to finish this quick before the country chooses a new daimyo. Fu was breathing deeply as she took out another kunai. The enemy, whoever they were, was completely destroying the village. So far only 20 of them, including herself, were still standing and able to fight. But for how long she had no idea, especially now that Shibuki, the only person to treat her nicely, was dead. Fu, the enemy seems to be encircling us. A Jonin reported. True enough, instead of attacking directly, the enemy was encircling him, cutting him off from escaping. However, through the flames engulfing the village, a single person could be seen making his way towards them. But the worst part was the killer intent he was giving off. It was incredible. Hell, several experienced Jonin were having trouble keeping conscious just from the mere presence of the man. Fu, however, retained her composure and stood firm, holding a brave face on. Soza paused and looked at them. Then he spoke. Shinobi of Takagakure, surrender to the might of the Uzumaki, and your lives shall be spared. Fu smirked and said, don't underestimate the power of Taki Nin bastard. The other ninjas nodded and prepared for a fight. Soza merely sighed and raised his fist, getting ready to do a punch. Closing his eyes, Soza said, then you leave me no choice. His eyes open. But to put you down like rebels. Then he thrust his fist forward, and when he did, a powerful sonic blast radiated from the punch, blasting some, if not all, the ninjas into the air. The blast even began to shatter the ground beneath them. Fu, however, remained where she was and charged towards Soza. This guy is strong, she thought. Better use version 2 and finish him off. Suddenly red chakra began to cover her body and became darker. Soon her entire body was covered in red chakra and she sprouted all 7 of her wings. She used her increased speed to try and tackle the man, but Soza managed to get out of the way. Then before Fu could react, Soza landed a powerful punch into her rib, even managing to break the chakra cloak that surrounded her. The resulting impact caused her to crash into the ground and created a small barrier. But Fu wasn't done yet. Using her remaining willpower, she began to form a tail beast bomb. Soza saw this and lifted his leg and brought it down onto her chest hard, crushing her lungs and stomach. Now all Fu had left to say was large amount of blood coming out of her mouth. The last thing she saw before darkness consumed her was Soza opening a scroll. As Soza watched the life fade from Fu's eyes, he opened the scroll and performed several hand signs. Grand Chain Imprisonment Jutsu. And suddenly dozens of chains began to pour out of the scroll and towards Fu. When they touched her, a red sphere of demon chakra began to slowly come out. When it was fully out of Fu's body, the chains began to wrap around it until it was completely covered up in chains and pulled back into the scroll, which Soza promptly rolled back up. Don't worry, Chome-san, you'll be well treated amongst the Uzumaki, he said. Back in Konoha in the Hyuga compound, Hinata was hard at work practicing her gentle fist style. Her jacket was off, thus revealing her fishnet and blue shirt underneath it. Sweat ran down her face as she continued training. As she did, she thought of Naruto and how proud he would be of her and how strong she got, that is, if he was even still alive. Anime and manga. Hinata, a familiar voice said. Hinata turned around to see her father, Hiyashi, staring at her. The look in his eye meant that he had to talk to her about something important and something bad. Can we talk in my office? He asked. Hinata nodded and followed him towards his private studies. When they arrived, Hiashi sat in his chair while Hinata stood before him, a glare in her face. Hiashi did not let this go unnoticed but nevertheless continued. It has come to my attention that you have severely beaten many villagers of Konoha in the past few years. Hinata raised an eyebrow. And you decide to discuss this with me now? She asked. Hyashi's eye twitched but remained calm. I've only denied talking to you about it because I would have figured that you would have ceased this infatuation over Naruto Uzumaki even though it's been 3 years since his death. Hinata glared at her father. We don't know for sure if he is dead, she said defiantly. The head of the Hyuga clan shook his head. Whether or not he's alive is not the case here. The fact is that if you continue this absurd behavior, I will be forced to take drastic measures to make sure that you do not tarnish the name of the Hyuga. Hinata clenched her fist but then relaxed it. I shall be sure to keep that in mind, father. May I go now? She asked defiantly. Hiashi couldn't help but wonder at what happened to her daughter these past 3 years. A good bet it was that fox brat. He thought to himself but said nothing. Yes, you are dismissed, he said. Hinata did a quick bow and headed out the door, not even looking back at her father who still eyed her carefully. Back in the whirlpool, more precisely at the main harbor of the country, was Naruto Uzumaki, watching as the last ship was being loaded up with supplies and the men were boarding it. Naruto had a look of determination and he stood straight up without bending his body. Naruto-sama, a voice said. Naruto turned around to see a man approaching him. He was about his size and appeared to be in his mid-20s. He wore a red military uniform and a small blue cape. He had a sword strapped to his side and had red curly hair. He was Senryaku Uzumaki, head of the Whirlpool Intelligence Division. Ah, Senryaku-san, I was wondering when you would get here. The man had a look of urgency on his face. I implore you, Naruto-sama. Please remain within the palace. If you go out to the other nations, then I cannot promise you your safety. Senryaku said. Naruto smiled as he continued to watch the ship being loaded. I assure you I shall be fine. Besides, a girl I've been thinking about is there, and I want to see her again. Naruto said. Senryaku raised an eyebrow and smirked. You mean Hinata Hyuga? It was not a question. It was raining in Konoha that day, the day Naruto returned home. People did not mind the rain. They were used to it after all. People walked across the village carrying on with the daily lives without a care for the world. However, standing on the wall that surrounded the village, 4 people could be seen in hoods were staring down at Konoha. The one in the middle, for a brief moment, showed red eyes until his hood once more hid them. With a wave of his hand, all 4 of them moved out into the village. Tsunade was in her office, staring out the window. Something's not right, she thought to herself as Shizune came in. Noticing the look in her master's eyes, Shizune asked, Is something wrong, Tsunade-sama? The 5th Hokage turned around, the look still on her face. I was playing a game of solitary and I won, Tsunade said to Shizune. Confused, Shizune raised an eyebrow. Tsunade Saida continued. I almost never win at anything, which means, something big is going to happen. The Hokage said in a serious voice. Shizune finally understood and began to worry. Tsunade was right, usually when she won something, well, that was like a bad omen to be more exact. Only Kami could predict what might happen next. Suddenly a Chunin arrived, a disturbed look on his face. Tsunade-sama, one of our outer patrol was found dead about an hour ago. Tsunade's eyes widened at the news. Were any traces of which direction the attackers went to found? She asked. The Chunin shook his head. No, Tsunade-sama. But our best guess is that they were heading towards Konoha. However, the barrier team had reported no disturbances with the barrier. The Chunin reported. Put all teams on alert but do not make this public. Tsunade ordered. The last things that we need are the villagers going into panic. The Chunin nodded and disappeared. Shizune, contact Hiashi Hyuga and tell him we need of some of his best men. I believe that the Byakugan might be useful in this matter. Yes, ma'am, Shizune said and ran off. Back at the Hyuga compound, Hinata was busy training outside in the Hyuga's private training ground despite the rain. In fact, the rain helped hide Hinata's tears, because today was Naruto's birthday. Usually these days on his birthday, the people of Konoha would be celebrating his death, however the rain cancelled all their plans to do that. Suddenly one of the servants called out to her, Hinata-sama. Your father and the elders wish to speak to you. He said. Hinata paused from her training and shook her head and began to walk into the compound. As she did, she had this strange feeling, like something bad was going to happen if she kept on going. But she shook it off. If there were danger, then she would face it like Naruto would. But when she entered the meeting room, she only saw the elders there, but not her father. Wondering what was going on, Hinata asked, "Where is my father?" I was told that he had summoned me. One of the elders, Fukijin, sighed and said, Your father did not summon you, Hinata. Hinata noticed the lack of sama in his voice. We did. Then out of nowhere 2 Hyuga guards appeared from behind and grabbed Hinata by the other arms, and then struck her pressure points on her shoulders so she couldn't struggle. Hinata went limp for a moment before picking her head up and glared at the elders. What is the meaning of this? Hinata demanded. Fukijin got up and spoke while performing hand signs. We've agreed that your actions these past few years have been unacceptable and are putting the clan's reputation at risk. So it is decided that we must use an alternative method. One that Hiashi-sama has been reluctant to give you due to your position as heir to the clan. Hinata's eyes widened, as she knew what he meant. They planned to place the caged seal on her. She desperately began to struggle out of her captive's grip, as the elder got closer to her more and more. But just as he was about to finish the jutsu, something impaled him from behind, killing him instantly. Before anyone else could react, several tentacles waved around the room, striking everyone into unconsciousness, including her restrainers. When it was all over, she was the only one standing, well, her and her savior. He was about average size. His clothing was mostly gray and white, along with a mask and cape that he wore too. All Hinata could see of him were his blue eyes. Despite having saved her from a life of enslavement, she still had no idea who this man was. So she quickly activated her Byakugan and got into the gentle fist stance. However, the man made no move to attack. Instead, he kneeled before Hinata. Hinata-san, my name is Higaho Uzumaki. My lord has sent me to you as a messenger. He wishes you to join us, he said. Hearing the word Uzumaki, Hinata quickly relaxed her body. You're an Uzumaki? She asked. The man raised his head and nodded. Then she continued, then that means you know Naruto Uzumaki. When he shook his head, she almost cried, though the tears were forming already. She could see Naruto, and he was alive too. Higaho lifted his head. Yes, Naruto-sama is with us. In fact, he should be sending out a message soon. Tsunade was looking through the reports she was getting now from animal messengers that outside patrols were being attacked by what they described as a red swordsman. What the hell is going on here? Tsunade thought. First one patrol and now another is killed. I'm wondering if maybe it's better just to have all forces to relocate back into the village and wait until this rainstorm goes away. Suddenly Shizune came bursting through the door, or more like tumbling in. Before Tsunade could ask what was going on, a man came in. He wore a crimson leather coat like described in the reports. His hair was black, but it appeared to have been dyed that way. But most of all, he wielded a black katana with red writing on it. Who the hell are you? Tsunade asked as she got into a stance while Shizune got back up. The man just grunted and gripped his sword with both hands. Crimson whiplash. He cried, and when he swung his sword, a red chakra line headed straight towards Tsunade. The Hokage flipped the desk into the air, which took most of the damage, but Tsunade was still flung backwards and out the window. Tsunade-sama. Shizune cried as she grabbed Tonton and jumped out the window to follow. Tsunade was not seriously injured, thanks to her ninja and medical skills. Soon other shinobi and Shizune joined her and formed a defensive circle around their Hokage. Just as they were doing that, the man walked up to the window. Everyone be careful. This man has some weird jutsus. The man smirked. I am Futeki Uzumaki, he said and continued while the people down below gasped. And all I was supposed to do was get you out here so you could see him, he said as he pointed upwards. Tsunade looked up at the Hokage monument, and when he saw the person, she gasped. Joining her soon was the whole of Rookie 12 and their senseis, except for Hinata, of course. They looked up as well, followed by everyone else, and gasped at what they saw. For above the fourth Hokage's head were two people. One of them appeared to be in his late teens and wore a green sweatshirt with the hood over his face. But they could still see the blue eyes and a faint bit of brown hair. He wore gray pants too, and on his hands was brass knuckles. But it was the second person that caught their attention. For he was none other than Naruto. Sakura asked, not sure to be relieved or frightened of her friend's return. Naruto's face showed no emotion, nothing that the old Naruto once had. But there was one thing they saw: hatred. Pure hatred in those crystal blue eyes was all that was shown. Then all of a sudden they turned red like a demon. That's when he started speaking. People of Konoha, for your crimes against both the Uzumaki clan and the Whirlpool country, you will soon face the full might of our clan and country as a whole. Know this, for I am Naruto Uzumaki, Kitsune of the Six Paths. Hinata followed Higaho deeper into the forest north of the village, where people usually don't go. In fact, by then Hinata could no longer see Konoha. But she didn't care. All that she cared about was seeing Naruto again. We've arrived, Higaho said. Sure enough, they soon entered a clearing where a large campsite was currently in. The place was filled with samurais and ninjas that bore the crest of the Whirlpool and Azushiogaku. And as they entered the site, Hinata realized that the area was covered in a barrier, protecting them from being detected. When the people saw her, they all bowed as she passed by them. Soon Higaho led her to a large tent in the center of the campsite. Naruto-sama is in here and is waiting for you, the man said as he opened the tent flap. Hinata nodded and walked inside just as Higaho was closing the flap. When she got her bearings, she saw Naruto sitting right in front of her, looking at a map of the world. He turned around, and when he saw Hinata, he gave her a smile that made a blush spread across her cheek. Hinata, he murmured and walked towards her as she did the same. Soon the two were embracing each other in a hug. Hinata had tears going down her face, taking in his scent, one that she had missed for a long time. When they backed away from each other, Naruto took a good hard look at her before saying, "I'm sorry." Hinata raised an eyebrow, confused. About what? About not seeing the truth. Naruto said, "All my life I've been going after the girl who didn't give a damn about me when I should have focused on the only girl who had any feelings for me. And for that I'm sorry." Naruto placed one of his hands onto her cheek and began rubbing it. But Hinata stopped him and put her own hand over his. "It's not your fault, Naruto-kun. It's mine, I shouldn't have been so shy," she said. Naruto smiled and rested his forehead against hers. "Well, none of that matters now. I have you and you have me and I plan to keep it that way." And with that, Naruto pulled Hinata in for a kiss and all Hinata could feel was pure bliss. Hokage Mansion. Back in Konoha it was a different story. People were scared, angry and in panic. Shinobis were doing their best to keep some sort of order amongst the village while Tsunade had summoned a meeting of the council. They were in utter outrage, demanding that something be done about the incident. "Why hasn't something been done about this yet?" yelled a member of the civilian council. Tsunade sighed before replying, "The reason is because we have no idea if Naruto is going to attack now or not. Would you rather have half of our forces heading out in a wild goose chase?" "Troublesome," Shikaku said. "Naruto wouldn't do something so rash like suddenly attacking us. More likely he'll try and buy time until his forces grow to a larger scale. Indeed, this is most likely just a way of worrying the people. To make them think that he will strike soon. He will most likely go after countries that do not possess ninja villages, or the more weaker villages." Shibi Aburama retorted. Tsunade nodded before speaking, "Agreed, but now we have another problem." She said the last part while looking at Hiashi. "The disappearance of Hinata Hyuga." Hiashi flinched a little but spoke, "I may know the cause of her disappearance." All eyes were on him. Apparently the elders had grown tired of her constant beatings on other people for insulting Uzumaki. They had intended to place the caged bird seal on her by force in order to keep her under control. The results were all the elders were injured and one was killed. There were some gasps from the civilian councils along with a few glares from the clan leaders towards Hiashi. Tsunade sighed and rubbed her temple, clearly not pleased with this news. "For now we just have to be wary when we send shinobi out of the village. And hopefully we can work out some kind of deal with Naruto to spare the village and the country." "That is impossible," a monotone voice replied. Everyone turned towards the source of the noise and saw 7 people wearing black suits underneath a white coat similar to Naruto's but with gray capes over those. They also wore a hood and a mask to cover their faces too. The citizens got up and backed away from them while the ninjas got into defensive positions. "Who the hell are you?" Chum of the Inuzaka clan snarled. One of the masked figures stepped forward. "We are the heralds of Naruto-sama and we have come with a message from his mouth." When none of the Konoha ninjas said anything, he continued. "In 5 months, all 5 great villages shall be wiped off the face of the map." And with that they shimmered away from the room, leaving a haunted feeling above the council and the Hokage's heads. Konoha 12. Elsewhere in Konoha, the Rookie 12, or what was left of it, were speaking amongst themselves about the whole events on one of the training grounds. Some of them, like Shikamaru, Sakura, Sai and Neji said nothing, while others, like Ino, Tenten, Joji, and Lee were speaking out more than the others. Naruto wouldn't really destroy the village. Would he? Ino asked. Neji shrugged. "We can't say for sure, but it has been 3 years. Who knows what has been going on through his head? He replied. I bet it was one of those other Uzumaki guys who messed with him. Tenten retorted. No, Sasuke said, I think it was Naruto's choice to do this. Neji glared at him. And how would you know? He asked angrily. Sasuke shrugged. Well, how would you react if the village that abused you for years kept the secret that your clan was still alive for so long? He asked. The others had to admit that was a pretty good point, which made him feel more down. Finally Tenten asked, what do we do about Hinata? Neji sighed. There's nothing we really can't do. Unless Tsunade gives us a mission to bring her back, the clan will never welcome her due to the death of an elder. We can only pray that she is somewhere safe. Everyone nodded at that just as an Anbu suddenly appeared before the group. Without wasting time he said, you are to report to Hokage-sama at once for a special mission. After that he disappeared. An hour later all of Konoha 12 were kneeling before the Hokage on top of the mansion. She had a serious look on her face as well as letters that she gave to Shizune who passed them out to Shikamaru, Sasuke, Neji and Shino. As you know, a new enemy threatens not just our village but others. She said the last part with grief, not believing that Naruto had become an enemy. I've decided that a meeting of the 5 great cages is needed. Thus I'm sending your teams out to deliver the messages to the other villages. I would use messenger birds but they would be too vulnerable for the Azunin to attack. Team Kakashi, you shall go to Krigakure. Team Asuma shall go to Suna. Team Kurenai shall go to Iwagakure. And Team Guy shall go to Kumogakure. Now go. And with that all the ninjas jumped off the mansion and towards the village gate, except for Team Kurenai. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Finally Kiba spoke. Tsunade-sama, what are we going to do about Hinata? Without her our team is one man down. Tsunade sighed. I understand Kiba. I've already sent out several teams to find her, but right now you guys must focus on delivering this message. Understand. Shino and Kiba nodded while Akamaru whimpered and soon all 3 of them headed off. Naruto's tent. Naruto smirked as he heard the footsteps approaching his tent. Hinata had already gone to bed in another section of it so the meeting wouldn't disturb her. Soon 7 people entered the tent, the same on that were at the council meeting. Kasage Uzumaki, I assume that it went well. One on the hooded men took off his mask and his hood, revealing his face. He was a young man, probably in about his late teens, early 20s. He had long dark blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. His skin was tan but not too tan. He, followed by the others, kneeled before Naruto. Yes, Your Majesty. We have delivered the message and as you predicted the Hokage has sent out messengers to the other 4 villages. By your command we can set out and intercept them. Kasage said. Naruto smirked, leave that to me. I want to see how strong they got these past few years. I'm assigning you to guard Hinata-chan until she arrives safely to the Whirlpool Nation. Kasage looked up. And you, my lord? He asked. I shall stay here for a while, perhaps visit some of the other villages or assist our forces in taking over the smaller countries. Naruto smiled at the thought. Soon this world shall be under the Uzumaki, under the true children of the Sage of the 6 Paths. Senryaku stared at a map of the world with little figures standing on it. Each one represented the forces of other nations and their own. So far fate was shining down on them. None of the countries had taken the death of a daimyo or the seizing of his country seriously. They didn't even alert their shinobi villages to prepare for war. The stupidity of these people is incredible. Senryaku thought. No wonder Naruto-sama was able to unify the Western nations under Whirlpool rule. When Naruto had been brought back to Uzushiogakure, the village and the country were almost back their prime. The Uzumaki clan reunited under Sosa's leadership and managed to repair most of the country's economics, politics and military branches. But it was Naruto, now fueled with new determination, was what brought the Whirlpool to even greater heights. His desire to rebuild everything and unite all under one peaceful rule allowed him to study his clan's scrolls and learn thousands of jutsus. He even managed to control Kurama's chakra and partner with the fox. After that, he began seizing the country's neighboring Whirlpool, either through diplomacy or conquest, usually the latter, since many thought that the newly reformed country wasn't a threat. Any word from His Majesty? A voice asked. Senryaku looked up and saw a man enter the room. He was in his 40s and had long white hair. He wore a red robe with red armor under it. He had a small amount of facial hair as well. Ah, Hon-kun, I am glad you could make it. Naruto-sama is still in the eastern part of the world, assisting with the conquering of the other shinobi nations. But he has requested that your assistance in striking the land of water from the coastline and then proceed in applying pressure onto Kirigakure into mobilizing their forces in a way to our advantage. For that our Majesty has trusted this to you. Hon looked at the map and nodded. Then I shall not fail him. He said. Like Hon, many people of the Whirlpool Nation were fanatically loyal to Naruto, especially the members of the Uzumaki clan. Men would eagerly line up to join the samurai army, while others would strive to become ninjas to better serve their nation and village. Unlike other rulers, Naruto was more caring towards his people and actually cared what they thought. Senryaku nodded, but His Majesty does not want you to take immediate action until he gives the order. He does not wish to send in forces in case his army needs the extra troops. So when you arrive at about 500 miles from the coast, just stand by and await orders from Naruto-sama. He said to Hon. Before he could say more, a servant suddenly came running in. My lords. My lords. The escort carrying Hinata-sama has arrived. Hinata looked out the window of the carriage, taking in the sights of the country fields. She still couldn't believe how fast they got here. They, as in she and Kasage, used a large scroll to teleport themselves from the current position back in the Fire Country to end up in the royal harbor of the Whirlpool Country. The Uzumaki clan was certainly a powerful clan if they could do something like that so easily. But back to the view of the country fields, which still amazed Hinata. It was much beautiful and peaceful than the lands of the Fire Country. Children were playing out in the field without a care in the world. Men and women were calmly working out in the fields or talking to one another. It's so beautiful, she said in a soft voice. Kasage, who was sitting next to her in the carriage, nodded in agreement. It is. And we owe it all to Naruto-sama. He said as he looked out his window. This used to be a barren land with bandits assaulting weak farmers who barely had anything to begin with. But when Naruto, he solved all our problems in just a year, with his uncle right behind him to do so. And for that we all pledge our loyalty to Naruto, especially as the Monsvoritas. German for Moon Vanguards. Hinata looked at him curiously. Monsvoritas? She asked. Kasage nodded. Yes. We are a group of elite ninjas handpicked personally by Naruto-sama. We are also given new abilities by Naruto-sama himself. As such, we act as bodyguards or as the spearhead of most of our attacks. That is why he entrusted me to protect you until we reach the palace. In fact, here we are. Hinata felt the carriage making a turn on the road, causing her to look out the window. She gasped at the sight. The palace was huge. It had a large tower in the center with several smaller ones surrounding it. There were at least 5 layers of walls defending it, and the color was red, orange, black and gold. At the entrance to the larger tower were a number of guards dressed in red and gold samurai armor, and they wielded odd-looking spears. And with them were 2 differently dressed men waiting for them. When the carriage stopped, Kasage got out on his side, walked around to Hinata's side and opened her door. Then he offered her a hand, which she took and guided her off out of the carriage. The 2 other men bowed before her, one of them speaking. "Hinata-sama, it is an honor to meet you. I am Senaraku Uzumaki, chief strategist of the Whirlpool's army, and this is Hon Uzumaki, one of the generals." The man named Hon grunted in response. Hinata blushed at how formal they were being to her. Thank you Senaraku-kun for welcoming me here," she replied. "You can stand up now." Senaraku nodded as he and Hon stood up. Then he said, "You are as kind and polite as Naruto-sama says Hinata-sama. Please, I am sure that you are tired from your trip. The maids have set up a room for you to rest in, and the guards shall escort you." Hinata nodded and allowed herself to be guided by several of the armored guards into the palace. A few hours later, Hinata was dressed in a white nightgown that the maids had given her. Soon she was escorted into a large room with a king-size bed in it. It had several purple pillows with golden trims on them. The purple sheet on it looked very inviting to her as her energy started to go away. Before she went over to the bed, she looked at the maid. If it is okay, I would like to write a letter to Naruto-kun after I rested." The maid bowed her head. "Of course Hinata-sama. Just let us know when you awake." And with that she walked out of the room. Then Hinata walked over to the bed and gracefully got into it, covering herself up with the blanket. She quickly snuggled deeper into the bed and with her last thoughts on Naruto, fell into a deep sleep. Back with Naruto, his forces had finally regrouped with Sosa's forces, bringing them to the border of the land of bears, where the village hidden in the stars was. They had already sent ninjas to assassinate any guards on the borders in a certain area, so that their forces would be able to break through with ease. Their first target was Hoshigakure. Destroying their ninja village would bring morality to a dropping point for the nation. It was a simple attack, using brute force to penetrate the village with enough force that the defenders would fall quickly. And then the destruction of their precious star made their morale drop to a point where they simply gave up. Soon all that was left was a small force of Hoshi nin being led by their 4th Hoshikage, Akahoshi. Naruto, a force of 50 Azu nins, were brought to face off against the 20 remaining Hoshi nin and their Hoshikage. Akahoshi had a broken arm and blood running down his face. "Bastard! You bastard!" he murmured as he glared at Naruto. "What is the point of all this? Why invade us when we have done nothing to you?" Naruto smirked and drew his katana. "This is for the greater good of the world. And I know that you only took command for your own greed. Now kneel before me or suffer a death most humiliating," the blonde shinobi said. Akahoshi growled and took out a kunai. "Shinobi of Hoshigakure, attack." Then he charged, followed by the rest of the ninjas, all of them determined to go down fighting. Naruto smirked and sheathed his sword, and then performed some hand signs. Futon, fox's roar. Suddenly a large gust of wind appeared in the form of a fox's head and headed straight towards the Hoshinin. The gust was so large and powerful that it obliterated all of them, including Akahoshi. As Naruto watched the wind die down, he ordered, "Gather up the prisoners and put them into camps. Once we have taken the palace, we shall then begin reconstructing this village into another Azushigakure." Back with Team Kakashi, Sasuke, Sakura and Sai were making good progress on their way towards Kirigakure. From the moment of the departure from Konoha, the Azunin had made no effort to stop them, nor was there signs of any other types of attacks. Sasuke did not like how there was no effort to stop them. He wanted a challenge right now. He was literally itching for a fight. Well, he got it when he heard someone yelled, "Kaiten, fire asteroids jutsu." And suddenly several round-shaped fireballs came soaring down from the sky. Sasuke performed his own jutsu. Kaiten, Great Fireball Jutsu. The two fire jutsus collided with one another, cancelling each other out. Soon Sasuke and his team saw their attacker standing on a branch. It was the same man who had been with Naruto back in Konoha, the one with the brass knuckles. "My name is Shugeki Uzumaki," the man said. "And by orders of Naruto-sama, I have been sent to deal with you and your mission." Then he rocketed off from his branch and charged towards the team. He moved so fast that none of the Konoha nin had time to react. Shugeki struck Sasuke in the face while delivering several blows to Sai and Sakura with his fists. Sakura managed to recover the fastest and jumped back towards Shugeki, already swinging a fist at him. The Uzumaki managed to dodge the first blow but was struck in the side by a kick from her leg. Shugeki managed to recover and then, focusing chakra into his fist, struck Sakura with a blow to the chest, causing her to cough out blood as she was sent flying towards a tree. Fortunately, Sai caught her in time while Sasuke went to engage Shugeki. Sasuke created a rakri in his hand and tried to impale Shugeki. But Sasuke missed, allowing Shugeki to land a kick into this stomach. Sasuke, however, managed to pull out a kunai and deflected the attack and jumped back. "Kaiten, Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu," he yelled as he formed the hand signs. And then he launched a barrage of small fireballs towards Shugeki. Somehow the Azunin managed to dodge this attack and formed his own hand seals. Doton, Earth Flow Spears Jutsu. And then Spear of Earth and Mud appeared from the ground and tried to impale Sasuke. But the Uchiha used lightning to stop the attack, but this allowed Shugeki to get close enough and land and blow into Sasuke's right shoulder. Sasuke, however, managed to use that to his advantage, by twisting his body, which allowed him to kick Shugeki in the face. Shugeki backed away a little, which allowed Sasuke to pull out his sword and charged the Azunin. The ninja readied his brass knuckles and soon the fight became weapons against weapons. Sasuke had managed to cut Shugeki on the right side of his chest, while Shugeki managed to land several blows on Sasuke. Sai and Sakura soon joined in attacking the Azunin. Sakura tried to kick him in the stomach, but Shugeki managed to do a jump in the air and dodged the attack effortlessly. But Sai then tried to strike Shugeki with his katana, however the Azunin managed to deflect it with his brass knuckles and then he grabbed Sai by the throat and threw him at a tree, with which he collided with. However, he was unprepared in the kick to the back that Sakura delivered, and it caused him to go skidding against the ground. He managed to recover quick enough to dodge another attack by Sakura and Sasuke together. Moving quickly, Shugeki grabbed Sasuke by the back of his head and headbutt him hard. Sasuke backed away stunned, giving Shugeki time to deal with Sakura, who was chagrining him. Doton, Earth Walls Jutsu. And soon dozens of walls popped up out of the ground in front of Sakura, halting her attack. Raiten, Bolt Shot Jutsu. Then Shugeki clenched his hands together into a gun and from the tip, fired a lightning bolt that went straight through each wall right towards Sakura. When it struck the surprise Kunoichi, she screamed as she was electrified and then fell backwards. But Shugeki grabbed her by the top of her coat and prepared to deliver another blow to her with his chakra-enhanced brass knuckles. But before he could do so, a hand grabbed his arm. He turned around just in time to see Sasuke deliver a chidori straight through his chest, causing blood to spill out of Shugeki. Shugeki coughed out some blood and dropped Sakura. Now then, Sasuke said as he kept his chidori inside Shugeki. I've avoided any vitals because I want to know what Naruto is planning and where did he get his powers. The Uchiha said. Shugeki coughed a little bit. And why would you want to know that? He asked breathlessly. Sasuke glared at the dying shinobi. So I can use that power to kill Itachi and avenge my clan. He said with a serious tone. Shugeki chuckled a little before coughing again. You will never obtain that power. It is not for someone outside the clan to use. Only Naruto-sama is worthy of using it, cough, cough. And I would never betray him. He shouted as he pulled the chidori out of his chest and tried to kick Sasuke in the face. But the Uchiha dodged it and got further away, which is exactly how Shugeki wanted it because then he disappeared in a flash, having used the body flicker technique to escape. Damn, Sasuke thought as he stared at the spot where Shugeki once stood. Then he proceeded to help Sakura and Sai. 3 days later after the event, Team Kakashi finally managed to reach Kirigakure. After allowing his teammates to heal themselves in one of the village's hospitals, Sasuke followed the Mizukage's assistant, Ao, to the Mizukage's office where she was. First Ao knocked on the door. Mizukage-sama, the messenger from Konoha is here to see you. Let him in. Mei Terum said. Ao nodded and opened the door, allowing Sasuke to enter. Mei had to admit for a boy only in his teens, the last Uchiha was quite handsome. But nonetheless the Mizukage kept herself composed and replied, Greetings Uchiha-san. To what do I owe the honor? Sasuke bowed. Mizukage-sama, I have a letter from Hokage-sama for an emergency summoning of the 5 cages. It has to do with the current invading army throughout the countries. Mei nodded and took the letter, reading it slowly and carefully. When she was done she looked back at Sasuke. Thank you for this information Uchiha-san. Please let your Hokage know that I shall answer the summoning with all haste. For now why don't you and your team rest here for a bit? I can tell that you 3 were in some sort of brawl. Sasuke bowed, thanking her, before being escorted out of the office by Ao. In Kumogakure the Raikage was reading over the reports that he had received from scouts over the past few days. Word about a large army invading other countries had been going around a lot and the daimyo of the Lightning Country became worried that this army might try and attack them and he was beginning to doubt if his village could protect them. I was determined to make sure that did not happen, which is why he kept sending out patrols to the borders of the Lightning Country. Suddenly his assistant, Mabui, came in. Raikage-sama, there is a team of Konoha ninjas here to see you. They say they have a message from the Hokage. She said. A raised an eyebrow. What would the Hokage want with him? He knew that the relation between their 2 villages was strained since the whole event with the Hyuga incident. Nevertheless he might as well find out what she wanted. Send them in. He ordered. A few minutes later 3 young ninjas came in. One of them even possessed the Byakugan, much to Rei's surprise. If Tsunade was willingly sending a messenger with the Byakugan then this must be something important. The Byakugan user bowed his head before speaking, Greetings Raikage-sama, I am Neji Hyuga and this is Rockly and Tenten. He said the last part while pointing to his teammates. We have a letter from Hokage-sama about a summoning of the cages. Mabui took the letter and handed it over to the Raikage for him to read. I wasn't surprised when he read that the reason was because of the invading army, but he was surprised that Suand wanted to discuss it with the other cages of the other great villages. He looked up at Neji. Very well, you may tell the Hokage I shall answer the summoning. You may rest here until you are ready to leave. Neji sent a look to the Raikage that was almost a glare. Thank you for your offer, Raikage-sama, but we must head back now so we may inform Tsunade-sama of this. Another reason was that he didn't trust Kumogakure at trying to steal the Byakugan again. Lee and Tenten got the message as well and followed Neji out of the office. In Iwagakure, the Tsuchikage, Onoki was sighing as he read the letter that was given to him by the two Konoha nins. While he was relieved that it had nothing to do with him and his village hiring Akatsuki so much, he didn't like how it involved him to leave the village, which could mean that this invading force could attack at any moment. But if he didn't go, then he might miss any valuable intel that Tsunade might have for this. Kiba and Shino watched as the Tsuchikage finished reading the letter and looked up at the two of them. Very well, he said in a gruff tone. You may tell your Hokage that I shall respond to the summoning. My aide shall escort you to the village gate. Kiba and Shino bowed while Akamaru barked in response, and soon the two left. Onoki stroked his beard, thinking something big was going to happen with this summoning of the 5 cages. Shikamaru and his team caught their breaths as they finally reached the gate of Sunagakure, the village hidden in the sand. It had taken them at least 3 days to reach the village, and they were exhausted since they didn't have any sleep. The reason was because Shikamaru summarized that Naruto wouldn't waste time and allow him a break, so it was better to just move as fast as they could to the village. The guard stopped them and said, "What business do leaf ninjas have here in Suna?" Shikamaru sighed but replied, "We're here to deliver an important message to the Kazekage from our Hokage." He knew that this guy was just doing his job, but sometimes it could be really troublesome dealing with the whole system of showing identity to them just so they could get in. After all, his girlfriend was the Kazekage's older sister, for the love of Kami. And speaking of the devil, a familiar voice said, "It's okay, you can let him through." Temari-san. Ino squealed as she ran to hug her fellow blonde. Temari chuckled and hugged Ino back. Ever since Temari and Shikamaru started dating, she had more time to hang out with Ino. The two had become fast friends since they had similar personalities and were good at bossing the boys around. "So why are you guys here?" the Sand Kaneki asked. "What, no, hello, for your own boyfriend?" Shikamaru asked as he walked past the guard along with Choji. Temari rolled her eyes but gave a peck on Shikamaru's cheek. This earned a squeal from Ino and a groan from Choji. Shikamaru just muttered, "Troublesome," which earned a glare from Temari, but she ignored it. "So why are you guys here anyway?" she asked. "Like we told the guard, we have a letter to deliver to Gaara. It's a summoning of the 5 cages," Shikamaru said. Temari nodded, not very surprised. She had heard about the mysterious army that took over Takagakure and the country was in, and the recent invasion of the Land of Bears. She figured that one of the cages would call a summoning sooner or later, given the situation. "I guess something happened in Konoha?" she asked. Shikamaru nodded, "Yeah, that's why we're here." A few minutes later at the Kazekage's office, Gaara was reading the letter from Tsunade, and immediately turned towards Shikamaru and his team. "Thank you for this piece of news. You may rest here for the night and then head back to Konoha and inform Tsunade I shall answer the summoning," he said. The 3 bowed and headed out while being led by Matsuri. Back in Konoha, life had changed much since Naruto's unexpected arrival. People were either praying to Kami for forgiveness or protection from the demon child. Others were thinking about leaving the village to head to someplace safer. A few others were suggesting that a ninja be sent to deal with Naruto before he could cause any more harm or stay true to his promise. It suddenly came to them all that they never expected there to be consequences to their actions. That all this time they never stopped to think what would happen if Naruto became stronger and sought out revenge. Back in the Hokage's mansion, Tsunade was readying himself for the journey to the Land of Iron. As the rules implied, she could only bring 2 bodyguards. She wanted to bring Shizune, but she was the only person she could trust to run the village in her stead. So instead she would bring Kakashi and Asuma. They were both competent jonin and well known throughout the world as great shinobis. Also, Kakashi had some say in the matter since it was one of his students that they were dealing with. The only problems were the elders and Danzo, and speak of the devil, here came the 2 old windbags. As they came through the door, Koharu said, "Tsunade, if I may suggest, it might be wiser to send a team of jonin to deal with Naruto before this escalated. It would save the trouble of organizing this summoning. Also, it would make it seem like it was our fault." Tsunade frowned. "I would, but I'm not a believer of wasting life." Before the elders could retaliate, she continued, "You all felt the massive killer intent that Naruto gave off, right? That proves that he has become stronger than any of us can understand. Not to mention the size of his army can't be dealt with just a few simple jonin." The elders were not convinced. Though you may say that other people disagree with that view. In fact, the people have demanded Naruto's head after his return to Konoha. The council has also demanded that something be done about this threat. Homaru said, "Just because the people demand it doesn't mean I approve." Tsunade shouted, "I am doing something about the current situation and we will have a solution. But right now handling it ourselves will solve nothing, not when we don't have the manpower to deal with such a large force." Tsunade said as she grabbed the Hokage hat. "Now if you don't mind, I must be going." And with that Tsunade walked out the door, ignoring the glares from the elders. When she walked out the door, she spotted Danzo walking towards her office, his usually facial expression on. Out of all the enemies she had in Konoha, he was the most dangerous of them all, especially with that small army backing him up. But still Tsunade was confident that Danzo wouldn't try anything rash for Konoha's sake. The 2 just shared a brief nod as Tsunade walked past him. Once she was gone, Danzo turned to look at the elders. "I assume she did not agree with the plan." Koharu shook her head. No, she was insisted that a talk with the other cages was required to deal with the matter. "We must do something before this gets out of hand." Danzo nodded. "I agree, which is why I sent a team of my best agents a few days ago. Though I am not certain if they will get the job done, I did attach an information seal to each of them, so in case they would die, any info on Naruto's abilities would be sent to me immediately." "Your Majesty," Futeki said as he and Higaho walked towards Naruto, who stand over the battlefield. The daimyo's army had managed to hold off the Whirlpool's attack for more than 3 hours. Apparently some remnants of Hoshigakure had managed to make their way to the palace to help fortify its defense. But nonetheless they fell to the invaders, slaughtering them to the last man. Finally it was Naruto who took the daimyo's head. "Anime and manga." "Yes, Futeki," Naruto asked as he gave the daimyo's head to a soldier. His uncle Soza was beside him as well as the swordsman was walking up to them. "We have received word from Shugeki was unable to stop one of the teams from Konoha and was severely injured. He will live but will be unable to fight for some time. Also, our scouts report that all 5 cages are heading towards the Land of Iron for a meeting. By your command we can send forces to intercept them and kill them. Futeki reported. Naruto nodded, thinking about how to deal with the current situation. Tsunade was no doubt trying to rally the 5 great villages together in order to counteract the threat that the whirlpool posed to the world. He could just send the Mons Voritas and kill the cages quickly, thus turning the villages to go into inner turmoil. However, he still had things to do and he needed time to do it. He held up his left hand to his eyes and for a brief moment his chakra changed inside him. When he moved his hand, his eyes were now showing the Rinnegan. No, he said finally. We will let them have their little meeting and wait and see what happens after that. After all, we still have 4 more months until we fulfill our promise. Then he looked at Soza. I'm heading back to Whirlpool to look over the extra forces we're sending here. I trust you to continue to leading the army. Soza bowed his head. Yes, Your Majesty, was all he said as Naruto suddenly teleported away from his spot back to Whirlpool country. Soza looked at Futeki and Higaho and said, Higaho, go and spy on the next village. A megacore, I think it was. Futeki, tell the troops to help the wounded and then prepare to move in 5 hours. Both Uzumaki members nodded and headed out. Unknown to them, someone was watching from the shadows. Well, this is interesting. White Zetsu said. Yes, it is. We should inform the others. Black Zetsu replied. A few hours later, inside a cave where the only thing illuminating the place was a lantern standing on a small pillar, several images shimmered into existence. They were the Akatsuki. What news? Pain asked Zetsu. They are definitely from the Whirlpool Nation. Zetsu reported. Also, they are being led by Naruto Uzumaki, which means that the majority of their elites are from the Uzumaki clan. Silence followed this, taking that in. Since news of Naruto's death 3 years ago was brought to them, they had believed that the 9 tails had perished and their plans suffered a setback. But with this startling news, they could continue with their plan from before. Very well, we shall proceed with our plan and continue to capture the remaining Jinchuriki and complete our goal, however we may have to improvise in some areas. He turned towards 2 of the members. Deidara, Sasori, head out and capture the 3 tails while it's still in its location. Kankazu, hidden, go after the 2 tails while its host is still out of the village. Both men nodded and shimmered away. Soon the rest of them disappeared as well. Once they were gone, Pain and Conan turned to face Madara Uchiha, or Toby as he was called, sitting on the sidelines watching the whole thing, hiding his face in the shadows. So what do you think? Pain asked. Madara sighed before getting up. Before he stepped out of the shadows, he put his orange mask back on. The loss of 7 tail is a hard one. But we already have the 5 tails and can easily retake the 7 tails when the time comes. Anime and manga. The cages will no doubt likely decide to band together to face this threat. Pain said. Unlike us, whose intentions are clear that we intend to capture all the Biju, the Whirlpool has not shown the desire to do so. We may have an opportunity here. Madara nodded. Agreed, but that doesn't mean we can't be prepared for such things as a war. What news on the army? He asked. We've neared nearly 100,000 of Zetsu clones. Pain replied. Once we have enough, we can launch them to any parts of the globe from their location. And do not forget that a megacore also stands with us. At the northern gate of Konoha, Tsunade, Kakashi and Asum were preparing to go. The rest of the rookies and Team Guy were seeing him off, as well as most of Konoha. Several people were cheering on Tsunade, wishing the Sanin luck in the summit. Kakashi and Asuma had on brown robes for protection against the cold in the land of iron, which was a country that was covered by snow. Be safe, Tsunade-sama, Shizune said to her. Tsunade nodded and then said, I'm counting on you to run Konoha until I get back, Shizune. Hi, Hokage-sama, Shizune replied. Kurenai looked at Asuma and he looked back at her. Make sure to take care of my king, Kurenai-chan, Asuma said. Kurenai smirked before gently patting her stomach, before looking back at Asuma. Just make sure to come back alive, she said. Asuma smiled and nodded. Right, Kakashi, Asuma, Tsunade said as she turned around, pausing for a few seconds, her thoughts going back to Naruto and Hinata, wondering where they were. Let's head out. Hi, Hokage-sama, Kakashi and Asuma said at the same time, and the three began walking out of Konoha. Unknown to them, Senritsu Uzumaki watched the whole thing from afar before disappearing in a flurry of crow feathers. Kumogakure. In the mountain-top village of Kumogakure, the village hidden in the clouds, the Yondaime Raikage, had finished getting ready for the summit. He selected his 2 bodyguards, Shi as a sensor, Kumo's top medical ninja, and Genjutsu specialist, and Darui, his ninjutsu specialist swordsman who was a master of the Keki Genkai, storm release, with him. She had medium-length blonde hair, which covered his blue eyes as well as white skin, and was wearing Kumo's standard Jonin uniform of a one-strap, gray-colored Chunin vest as well as gray pants. Darui had black skin like most of the people in Kumo, and had short, spiky white hair and a large sword on his back that lacked a point, and was also dressed like she. The Raikage himself was a tall, imposing man who was extremely muscular, and he had his Raikage robe open to expose his muscular chest, and around his wrists were thick, metal gauntlets that looked like they weighed a ton each, and around his waist was the ogre belt, and he was wearing dark black pants. Martial arts films. Darui, she, ready to go? Asked, crouching down near the window. Hi, Raikage-sama, both said, wincing as they saw what the Raikage was about to do. Then let's go. Yelled, and with that, he jumped out the window of the Raikage tower, falling several hundred meters before landing on his feet before dashing towards the southern entrance. On the mist-covered Isle of Water country, in Kirigakure, the village hidden in the mists, Terumi May, the extremely attractive, brown-haired Godime Mizukage was preparing to leave with her 2 bodyguards, the young 7 swordsmen Chojuro and Ao, the leader of the Undertakers, Kiri's elite hunter ninja unit were preparing to go while standing on the docks. A group of villagers were seeing him off. May was wearing a blue, low-cut kimono that showed off her impressive cleavage and legs with ninja mesh under it, and she was carrying her robes in the pack on her back. Chojuro was wearing his glasses, a white long-sleeved shirt with vertical black stripes, and cargo pants that were blue and black. Around his chest was where his headband was, connected to the harness that carried the Hirameki, his 2-handled sword in its unreleased form. Ao's white hair was standing up in a point, and he was wearing strange-looking earrings that had tags over them, and his right eye was covered in an eye patch. He was wearing the same white sleeve shirt that Chojuro was wearing, but had a blue kimono over his body, and around his forehead was his headband. Sir, I swear on my name as Mizukage I will fulfill my duty, May said as she took her Mizukage hat from the elder as he handed it to her. Ho ho ho, as one of the great 7 swordsmen, you must protect Mizukage-sama. I think I'll be fine, probably, Chojuro said, stammering. Have faith in yourself, you're strong, May told Chojuro gently, making him blush. That's why you were chosen to guard me, okay, Chojuro? Yeah, I'll try my best. I hope, Chojuro said, blushing and smiling. She's so kind. All you need to say is, yes, mom. No one wants to hear your waffling. You kids today, just be a man. Ao said in disgust as darkness descended over May's eyes. A man. Ao, enough with the lecture. You need to hurry or else you'll be late for the meeting. Need a man. May thought. I'm just giving the kid advice. When I was his age. Shut up or I'll kill you, May said sweetly after turning to Ao, baffling him. ... Huh. Ao thought as his jaw dropped. May held up her hat. Come on Ao, Jojuro, let's go. I'll protect her beautiful smile, if I can. Chojuro thought eagerly as they got onto the boat and departed. Awagakure. In Awagakure, the village hidden in the rocks, which was nestled in a valley surrounded by large mountains, Onoki of the two scales was getting ready to go with his bodyguards. He was the Sandaime Tsuchikage, a contemporary of Sarutobi Hiruzen, and the oldest living kage in the 5 countries. He was also the shortest. He had long white hair, a large nose with bumps on it, and a white pointy mustache and pointy beard. He was also wearing the Tsuchikage robes, with the hat hanging around his neck. His 2 bodyguards were Kuretsuki, a pretty black-haired kunoichi who wore her hair in a bun, and was 2-strap gray chunin vest, black t-shirt and black pants, and was carrying a big box on her back. The other was Akatsuki, a tall, fat shinobi wearing the same outfit, with a big nose and a perpetual smile on his chubby face. Anime and manga. You can do it Tsuchikage-sama. Kuretsuki, Akatsuki, you better protect him you hear. A bunch of shinobi said on a bridge that was over the eastern gate. At my age, this meeting will be a pain, Onoki said, putting his hand onto his back and groaning. You youngsters don't understand what it's like when your hips are a virtual time bomb. How about it, Gramps, thinking of retiring? Kuretsuki teased as the Tsuchikage put his hand onto the box. You can't rely on your former glory forever. Ahahaha, I'll take your luggage for you, Tsuchikage-sama, Akatsuki said, and he began to lift up the box. Don't touch, Akatsuki, Onoki ordered, and he slipped his arms into his luggage's harnesses. I don't need your help. He then lifted, and there was a crack and his hips gave out. OHHH. My hips. What do you say? Should you send someone else in your place? Kuretsuki joked. Don't be ridiculous. Who do you think I am? Onoki demanded, his eyes bugging out from the pain. I am the Sandaime Tsuchikage, the great and fearsome leader of Awagakure. Oof. I'll carry my own luggage. Good grief, what a stubborn old man, Kuretsuki groaned, closing her eyes and rubbing the bridge of her nose. All right, I'll carry your luggage then. Let's go, Akatsuki said, lifting Onoki and his luggage up with ease, and putting them on his shoulder. With that, the 3 departed down the road towards the land of iron. Sunagakure. In Sunagakure, the village hidden in the sand, Gaara, the Godaime Kazekage was preparing to leave with his siblings who he had chosen to be his bodyguards. He was wearing his Kazekage robes and his hat was hanging loosely around his neck, hitting the giant gourd he was wearing on his back that was carrying his sand. Despite losing the Shukaku, Gaara was as strong as ever. Hell, he was arguably stronger. He still had his automatic sand shield, but he had been training for the past few months in taijutsu, so he wouldn't rely on it anymore, and he had added dozens of Fuyuten jutsus to his arsenal, and another reason why he was stronger: he could finally sleep without worrying about the Shukaku taking control. Kankuro stood next to him, his face paint changed, one purple line over his eyes, one over his mouth and one going up his chin to connect with the one on his mouth, and he was still wearing his black outfit. Temari had a white cloak on and on her back was a large scroll, and she was wearing white shinobi armor under her cloak, which had no sides. You were late, Kankuro, Baki chided his student as he stood with Ebizo and the rest of the villagers. It took me a while to figure out this new trick, Kankuro said with a grin. Be careful, Kozekage-sama, Matsuri, Gaara's student as well as girlfriend said with a smile. Kankuro, take good care of him, Ebizo said with a smile. We will, Temari said with a smile, waving a new small fan over her face to keep herself cool. All right, let's go, Gaara told his siblings, turning to leave. Not like Gaara needs bodyguards, Kankuro said with a grin, giving a thumb up to the villagers. The three began walking off, and the sand began to move under their feet and then the three stood still. Gaara then levitated the sand under their feet, and they began to depart at a high amount of speed towards the land of iron in the northeast. Back in the Whirlpool Daimyo's palace, Hinata was currently taking a shower. Her clothes were taken to be washed and a kimono had been placed on the rack for her to wear. It was a simple design really, a red line over a blue silk with the symbol of the Uzumaki clan scattered across it. But right now Hinata was focused on the soothing water that went down her skin. It felt so good to her, the water getting rid of any dirt or extra skin fat on her body. It also helped with her mentally, as if the water was washing all the worries in the past away. Suddenly the door knocked and through the curtains, Hinata could make out a female figure, meaning it had to be one of the maids. Hinata-sama, Naruto-sama has returned and is waiting for you in his room, she said. Hinata replied, thank you. Tell him I'll be there in a few. A few minutes later Hinata, in her kimono, walked into the room before gasping as a pair of strong hands surrounded her. She looked up just in time to see a yellow blur lean into her and press his lips against hers. Hinata soon relaxed in Naruto's grip and gave into the kiss, which she returned passionately. Hinata had never felt such bliss before. At last, after praying, dreaming for this day to come, it was finally happening. She was with her true love at long last. A few minutes later the need for air was required and the two parted, but Naruto brought Hinata to him a little until their foreheads were touching and their noses were almost in contact with each other. For a split second at that moment Hinata almost saw the old Naruto, with that goofy grin of his on his face. Then he said, I've got some time before I have to head back. The door to the room remained shut for the rest of the day. Inside Naruto's room of the palace, the said man and his lover, Hinata Hyuga, slept peacefully under the blanket that covered their forms. Last night had been, well, it was hard to describe last night. So in the best way to describe it was that it was wonderful. As they slept both of them still remembered how their raw flesh molded together in such smoothness. It could only be explained how much they truly loved each other and their trust of one another too. The moment was ruined however when a knock on the door could be heard. Naruto was the first one to wake up while glaring at the door, as if he wished it would just be silent. He looked back at Hinata, noticing how she was still asleep and how peaceful she looked right now. He took in her image for a few more seconds before getting out of bed. After putting on a robe he walked to the door and opened it, to be greeted with the sight of a servant with a letter in his hand. Forgive me Naruto-sama, but this scroll came from Senritsu-san. It has an A-class seal on it too, so the importance of it was great. Naruto nodded before taking the letter. Once the servant was gone Naruto closed the door and looked at the scroll with the seal still on it. After releasing the seal Naruto opened the scroll and read its contents. His eyes widened for a brief moment before narrowing, a smile forming on his lips. This was important news indeed. Naruto-kun? A small voice asked. Naruto looked up and saw Hinata lying on the bed. She had a tired look on her face as she was rubbing one of her eyes. Her other hand held onto the blanket as to cover her body better. Is everything okay? She asked. Naruto gave a soft smile at her, the same kind of smile that made her blush all the time, still did too. It's nothing for you to worry about, Hinata-chan. Just something I got to take care of. Just stay in the palace and you'll be fine, Naruto said as he prepared to leave. Hinata still had a worried look on her face. Why, you'll be back soon, right? She asked. Naruto's smile softened and he walked over to the bed. Leaning forward, Naruto cupped Hinata's cheek in his hand and kissed her softly again on the lips. The two enjoyed the short bliss for a moment until Naruto moved back. I will believe it. Back in the land of iron, Tsunade, Kakashi, and Asuma were arriving in fortress where the summit was being held. A middle-aged man with bandages wrapped around his forehead was greeting him, wearing a formal kimono and two swords on his hip. He was the most powerful samurai in the land of iron, the equivalent of a Kage, High General Mifune. Greetings, Mifune started, and he looked at Tsunade. I am General Mifune. It is an honor to meet you, Tsunade. If you would please follow us to the meeting room. Tsunade nodded and followed Mifune towards the said room, with Asuma, Kakashi and several samurais following behind them. When they entered, they already saw the other Kages entering through other entrances. There was a silent acknowledgement between Tsunade and Gaara as they took their seats while their bodyguards sat in the seats above. Once Mifune signaled for the Kages to place their hats in front of them did the meeting start. As you all know, we have been called here by the Hokage for an important matter, Mifune said before turning to look at Tsunade. Tsunade nodded and began to speak. As you all know, a large unknown force has begun conquering both countries and their villages. As of a few days ago, I have, along with the rest of Konoha, have discovered who they really are. When no one said anything, she continued, they are the Whirlpool Nation and are being led by the Uzumaki clan. Mei gasped at the revelation after hearing that the old clan was still alive. Onoki raised an eyebrow while growled at the news. Gaara, however, looked shocked beyond belief while the bodyguards were talking amongst themselves. Finally Gaara spoke. Wait, Tsunade-san, does this mean? Tsunade nodded solemnly. I'm afraid, Gaara. The one leading this new threat is Naruto Uzumaki, son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, as well as the container of the Kyuubi. There were different reactions to different news. Gaara's was not that Naruto was alive, but what he was doing. Ai's was because a Biju container was running this invasion. Mei's and Onoki's were due to the fact that Kushina, who was an enemy of Kiri, and Minato, who was an enemy of Iwa, had a child. Tsunade, are you sure about this? Gaara asked in an emotional voice, something very rare of him to do. Tsunade nodded sadly and Gaara rested his forehead against his hands. Behind the curtains with the wind symbol, Kankuro and Temari looked at each other worryingly. However, seemed pissed. How could you have lost control over your Jinchuriki? In fact, this whole dilemma is on your village's head. He roared. Tsunade glared at the Raikage. I do not deny that my village is somewhat responsible for Naruto's current chosen path. But that does not mean we can't take all the blame. And the reason why I called this meeting was what are we going to do about this? She waited as the others were now focused on her. After taking over 2 countries already, it is clear that a single village, let alone a single country, can't take on this new threat alone. The only way we can fight back is for us to work together. Gaara looked up. Seconded, he said simply. Everyone stared at them before Mifune spoke. I agree with the Hokage and Kazekage. It is clear that this threat is too great for a single village to handle alone. For this I propose an alliance between the 5 shinobi villages, and if you would have it, the Land of Iron wishes to join as well, for this threat endangers our land as well. Mei also nodded her head. For the safety of our villages, Kirigakure will also join this alliance. She said confidently. Onoki seemed less convinced by this, but merely nodded his head as well in agreement. However, was not convinced. I will agree with this alliance, but the question remains who shall be in command of this new army. Mifune answered to this question. Being a representative of a neutral country, I ask that you respect my position and let me decide on who shall command this new army. When no one objected, he continued. Though I am not sure if they're after the tailed beasts, we should make sure to factor them into this equation. Despite that, those who still have faults in your own characteristics as well as your villages. Kirigakure has too many missing nins from its village and thus can't truly be trusted of information being leaked. The Kazekage is young and thus will not have the support of older shinobi from other villages. The Tsuchikage is old and has lost his prime. Plus someone of his age would most likely hold old grudges towards the other villages. The only 2 best choices are either the Reikage, whose village has a better military force, or the Hokage, whose village is well known for their bonds of friendship and teamwork. Also, it was the Hokage who brought this matter up while the rest of you remained silent. To this stood up. The cause of all this originated from Konoha. We can't fully trust them in this matter despite them acknowledging the threat. I'm the best choice out of all 5 of us. Kumogakure has no problems that could give it a reason of not having me put in command of this army. Actually, I could think of 2. A voice said. Everyone turned around and saw Naruto floating in the air above them. As if automatically, all the bodyguards got out from their seats and stood in front of their respective leaders, armed and ready for a fight. However, just as they took their places, the room was soon surrounded by dozens of ninjas, one of them Senritsu. The others all wore light blue armor on top of dark blue sweatshirts. The hoods covered their heads while animal-shaped masks covered their faces. They could only be a Anbu. But what caught their attention were Naruto's eyes. Instead of normal eyes with blue pupils, their socket was a gray-purplish color with black circles, with a black dot in the middle. The cages, except